Welcome to Inner Fortitude with Isis. I'm your host, Isis Byrne, and I thought that I would throw in a short-ish episode on addressing some of the questions that I find being asked about self-love. And I think that it's interesting because a lot of the questions that you'll see people asking about it are coming from people that have probably never practiced it before, or they practiced it maybe just a little bit and they aren't really sure how to feel any differently about a specific situation that they're going through, rather than actually tackling the issue of how do I get to the point to where I love myself. And as cheesy as self-love might sound to some people, it's actually one of the most amazing things, the most amazing gifts that you can give yourself. It will improve every relationship that you have in your life, and up to and including, of course, the relationship that you have with yourself. It will boost your confidence. It is going to make life a lot more joyful. It will change the way that you see the world around you. And it'll take a lot more once you actually cultivate self-love. It'll actually take a lot more to kind of knock you down, right? When horrible things happen and life happens, things happen in life, you bounce back a lot easier once you've cultivated a little bit of self-love, once you've learned to accept and love yourself exactly as you are. It also makes it easier for you to realize that there are areas where you can do better, and you grow, collectively and incrementally throughout your life, because you start to prioritize knowing those things about you and making sure that you're okay, no matter what. And so I monitor a lot of, questions, and I field some of them myself. Some of them are by direct message. Some of them are questions that are posted in public forums, and also in, reading up on the subject. I see that people are kind of asking a lot of questions about, hey, I'm going through this situation right now. How can I do the self-love thing while I'm going through this? Totally makes complete sense, because sometimes you don't really realize that you need to change something in your life until you kind of hit some sort of wall or a rock bottom in your life. Something changes drastically where you start to realize that you're like, I might not have been doing these things the right way because I don't feel very strong right now. And I understand this self-love thing can help me recover a lot faster and can maybe make this less painful. How do I do that? And I hope that some of the people that are listening to this message are not at rock bottom, are not banged up against a wall. I hope that you're curious to understand how to do this when you're not in such a bad place. But if you are, I don't want to discourage you from trying, because you can start at any time. But now moving forward, it can help you heal. And so that's what this is about. It's about recognizing that if you do this now, no matter where you are in life, it will help you deal with this kind of stuff in the future a lot better. So, coping mechanisms, it's one of the things that you strengthen with self-love. So I want to talk about some of these questions, and I want to address them one by one, because I think that they deserve some time and dedication and an honest, compassionate response. Because I feel for a lot of the people that ask these questions, I've been in the same shoes in a lot of these cases. So the first one to start with is, this question was, how do I handle rejection from others with self-love? Okay, so this question is interestingly phrased, as I mentioned before. This is a very specific situation to this person. They must have just been rejected by someone or someone's, more than one person, and they're having a hard time coping with rejection because they see the reflection as or rejection as a reflection on them. They place the value that other people have on them. They see that as, well, I must not be valuable if they didn't see it. How could I love myself if they couldn't bring themselves to love me? And here's the truth, okay, the candid truth. the perception that other people have of you, their ability or inability to accept you, has nothing to do with you. And I know that you've probably heard that before, and you probably don't want to believe it because what you feel is what you feel, and feelings are real, right? But remember, feelings are not fact. Feelings are stories that we've told ourselves that trigger emotions. Okay, so I'll give you an example of that. You just got rejected by somebody. I'm going to pretend that this is a dating situation, okay? You met them on a dating site and you went out on your first date and it went really well, you thought. You really liked that other person and you want to go out again, only to find that the other person didn't really set up a second date and you've reached out to them and they're like, oh, hey, what's up? And they're very, distant. And at some point or another, you're like, hey, so when are we going to go out again? And this person just says, yeah, no, actually, I don't think that we have the chemistry. I'm going to move on. They don't want to go out with you again. That is a rejection, right? They've rejected me. When I tried to go out on a second date, they weren't interested. So I feel rejected. If you really stopped to process that emotion of what happened when I wanted to go out on that second date and this person said, no, thank you, I felt hurt, right? Because I did like that person and I really did want to go out with them. The initial reaction that my body made was a feeling of sadness, a disappointment, that I'm missing out on potentially a good relationship. I really wanted this to continue and this person doesn't want it to continue. So that's the initial the initial emotion. What happens after that, if I sit with it long enough and don't process it as, wow, I'm really disappointed. I'm bummed that they didn't want to continue it. But, I guess there must have been something that didn't work out in that first date, or, there was just not that, I didn't appeal to them in one way or another. And I'll try again tomorrow, right? And go back on the dating websites and keep going. That's one way to respond to it and process the emotion. But then there's other options. There are other ways to process that. I can say, okay, this person rejected me. They weren't interested. I was very much so interested. Why weren't they interested? Am I not pretty enough? I'm not attractive enough? Maybe they didn't think I was good looking. Was it something that I said? Maybe I wasn't as, smart as they were, and they picked up that maybe they didn't like that I wasn't so smart. Or was it that I told them that I had a political affiliation? I bet that they didn't like my political affiliation. I shouldn't have said that. Why did I even say that? I don't even like politics. And so you start forming this, what did I do story in your head. What is it about me that they don't like? If this sounds familiar, because this is so common, we start to internalize it. And instead of seeing it for what it is, which is basically like, well, I guess this person had a preference. That's their choice. That's on them. It has nothing to do with me. It wasn't a match. I'll try again tomorrow. I'll try again next week. I'll line up another date. I'm sure that I'll be fine. That didn't work out. I was bummed, gave myself the permission to be sad for a little bit that, oh man, they were really nice. I really enjoyed that date, but it was just a first date and that happens. And that doesn't mean anything. It just means that they weren't interested, and that's okay. Instead, we've told ourselves the story. What did I do? What do I look like? I should have lost that holiday weight. I knew that I shouldn't have worn that outfit. I know that I shouldn't have said that at the date. What did I do? What did I do? Am I not good enough? Man, every guy does this to me. They don't ever want to go out on second dates with me. This happens all the time. The last guy stood me up. So you start to form a story, and those stories start triggering emotions. Because if they really happened, right? If these events really happened and you haven't processed the emotion of, it's okay, I'm looking back, maybe we didn't have a lot in common. He did kind of have some opposing viewpoints. Oh, well, if he's that sensitive, maybe not a good partner for me. Instead, we start to think what's wrong with us. And that hurts, right? It hurts to think that you're rejected because it's your fault. It hurts to see rejection as yet another piece of evidence that I'm not good enough. And they're not the first one, and they're not the second one. And, this happens to me all the time. And you start getting in this mindset that you're unworthy. And then you ask the question, how do I handle rejection from others with self-love? And I laugh, but it's actually not a funny thing. It's just curious, because when you ask the question, it's coming from the right place. And you're right to ask about self-love, because you absolutely need it. But the reason why you feel rejected, right? You feel like someone has looked at you and said no, and that hurts, is because you've internalized it and blame yourself for them turning their back on you. So my advice to that one is to say, rather than asking the question on how I can use self-love to get over this rejection, I would say, what are the first steps in self-love? Because you've got to start somewhere, honey. What you're going through, really, it can be very painful if you believe the stories that you are telling yourself in your head, that you're not worth it, that you're not good enough, you're not good looking enough, you're not interesting enough, you're not smart enough, you're not, well articulated. When you start to see that story in yourself, because those are the things that you've sort of trained yourself to believe all your life, and maybe other people have contributed to that, you get stuck in a loop of feelings. And so my suggestion is to start by journaling the events. The only thing you know is that the person did not want to go on that next date. Okay, that's a fact, so write it down. The event was, when so-and-so didn't want to go out with me again, I felt hurt. I felt sad. Understand why you felt that sadness. I really liked them, and I was hoping that this would work out. And be honest, right? Be compassionate with yourself. Don't judge yourself for having any of these feelings about this event, but stick to what was a fact, because you don't know that he didn't think you were ABC. Right? You don't know that he thought badly of you. You only know that he politely said, I think that maybe we should go our separate ways. I didn't feel the chemistry, which really doesn't mean it's not on you at all. So address that specific point. Say, when this happened, I felt this way. Give yourself permission to feel sad for a little while. That sucks. I'm bummed. Really wish that it would have been different, but it isn't different. Don't hold on to the hope that things could have been different. Accept that the event happened exactly the way that it did. And that the lesson from that is, okay, I'm next time that we go on the first date or whatever, if I think that I could have done something differently, I'll do it differently next time. But I can't change what happened. I wore what I wore. I said what I said. It is what it is. So if there's something to learn from it, maybe you called too much, maybe it doesn't matter. Whatever you feel, where you believe led to that, you can address that by doing better in the future, but you can't change the past. So don't bother. Don't stay stuck in it. Okay, I'll take the lesson, carry that lesson forward. Everything else, throw it out. The stories don't matter. What you think he may have been thinking does not matter. He, she, right? Because this could be a guy asking this question as well, that they got rejected. Don't make assumptions. Do not fill in the blanks. Your story wants to. It wants to understand, like, well, why, why does he, they must have been looking for XYZ kind of person. You don't know that. You might have been just great. They were just not, the timing could have been wrong for them. You never know. Maybe their ex called and they still have feelings for them and they moved back to that. You don't know anything. So don't form the stories in your head. Don't pretend to know what could have happened. Stick with what you know. Okay? When you have that in your journal and you have the event and you have how you felt, give it a name. I was sad. I was angry. If it's anger, explore why you were angry. Angry always comes from somewhere else. It comes from a place of fear. It comes from a place of pain, but it doesn't sit by itself. Anger is not its own standalone emotion. Or at least it's not the primary emotion. It is its own standalone emotion, but it is not the primary emotion. It's a secondary emotion. So try to remember that. Every time that you have angry on that journal for an event, go, I felt angry. Ask yourself why you were angry. What was the feeling you had before the anger? What came before it? Were you feeling sad or were you feeling afraid? Because fear triggers anger. And sadness, if we feel defenseless enough, if we feel vulnerable enough, it will trigger anger. It's our natural defense mechanism, which is really cool. It works in our favor a lot of times. Sometimes not so much, but understand it. Understand your anger. Understand where it came from. So handling this rejection by practicing self-love is by first trying to become a little more self-aware of what your emotions are and observe what the events were and what the facts were, not what you were creating in your head, but rather what actually happened, okay? So that's my advice for question number 1. Question number 2 that I have seen. How can I practice self-love when I live alone? It is the perfect time to practice self-love when you are alone. Absolutely, hands down, when you're alone and you don't have somebody to explain it to or ask, hey, is it all right if I do XYZ? You can just do it. It is so beautiful. The silence that you can get while sitting in your own humble abode to explore yourself, to truly ask yourself all the right questions and getting to know yourself is a beautiful thing. It is a wonderful, amazing opportunity. So if you're healing from a breakup, if you are finding yourself living alone for the first time, or you've just been single for a while and you're just kind of like, I don't know how I can even begin to do this. I kind of lean on social stuff to feel happy. Start finding ways to learn about yourself and form a self-care routine that is going to provide you with the passion and the self-appreciation, self-compassion, self-gratitude, and understand the world around you so that you could begin to cultivate more of that self-love. Again, I say it until I'm blue in the face and my spit runs out. Practice self-awareness. Get to know yourself first. This is the perfect time to get to know the real you. Ask yourself the questions like, what makes me tick? What makes me happy? What makes me, frustrated? What are the best ways for me to handle stress? How can I get myself to the point of bringing balance to my life if I have a stressful job or if my family drives me crazy? How can I best communicate with them? And you start to learn so much about yourself and there's nothing standing in your way. So how do I practice self-love when I live alone? It's the best time to do it. So just start. Look up practicing mindfulness, look up journaling. I actually have episodes about self-awareness and self-love. Look into them, listen to them, and see if any of those things ring familiar to you or appealing to you so that you can begin to do them. You don't have to do them all, but pick what feels right for you and take baby steps. It's not going to happen overnight, but every little time that you spend on yourself, you will feel better. Promise. The next question. Let me get a drink of water before I take the next question. How can I love myself when I hate what I look like? This is painful to read because I can completely relate to feeling bad about the way that I look. I lived for many, many years feeling like I had to hide my body and I had to hide myself. I kind of wanted to fade into the background on a regular basis because I was bullied a lot as a kid. I don't know if you noticed that I'm very thin. I've always been thin, and it isn't because of an eating disorder. It's because of genetics. I just am naturally a very thin person, and no matter what I did, nothing changed. And I did not begin to appreciate myself exactly the way that I am until I was well into my 30s. And that is only when I started. But even when I started to appreciate how I was exactly at that time, I still struggled with wearing certain types of clothing. I never wanted to show my arms. I never wanted to show my legs. I always felt so self-conscious because all of those things people said kept coming back to my mind, like a little traumatic bullying, PTSD. And so it hurts me to read this because we put so much weight on our appearance, and that is absolutely cultural. We think that our value is based on our appearance in a very big way because you feel like, well, that's the first thing people see. And if the first thing that they see is something that is unpleasant to them, then I have no hope of being happy in my life or finding the right partner or being seen as anything but this thing, right, that I see in the mirror. And the truth of the matter is that self-love is about the acceptance of ourselves exactly as we are. Your appearance has no bearing on the person you are. You can absolutely look at yourself internally, learn about yourself, accept who you are, where you've come from, how far you've come when you look back, and accepting yourself exactly the way that you are right now, no matter what you look like. It has nothing to do with your looks. There is no such thing as ugly. And if I find it, because I read a very, very well-written article about this very subject on how ugly, the word ugly, does not exist. It doesn't exist. It is a word that we've created because beauty is subjective. There is no such thing as a universal standard for good looks. Because there are people that look every which way, every size, every color, everyone has, it's like their fingerprints. No two people are exactly the same. And we put all of this weight on the way people look because of this media BS. The magazine covers that are, airbrushed, and, the supermodels that are, walking the runway. And you think that that's exactly what everybody is supposed to look like. It isn't what everybody is supposed to look like. You're supposed to look just like you. You are beautiful exactly the way that you are. And it took me a long time to accept that. For me to say, you know what? I have been beating myself up over something that I don't have a hell of a lot of control over at the moment. Maybe there's a way for me to work on this in the future. I don't know, right? I don't know. I don't know that I visited every single avenue, but I don't know that I can change much else about me. I am what I am, period. And if it changes in the future, it changes in the future. But right now, I accept this. This is who I am right now, right in this, 2020. And that is good enough. And you can do that too. But I would first start with getting to know yourself. Get to the bottom of why you feel like your looks matter that much. What else is there to you? You're not just a face. You're not just a body. So what do you have to offer yourself? Look internally and ask yourself, who am I? And as you learn more about yourself, you start to realize that, man, I have so much to offer that anybody who can't see past the cultural idea of beauty to see how great I am, why worry about it? Why lose sleep over it? Why torture myself with self-loathing? What's the point? It doesn't improve me. All it does is make me feel bad. So I had to find ways to stop dwelling on it. And the way that I found to do that was to get to know me for real. Once I started to sort of revisit the path of my life and understand what my strengths and weaknesses are, things that I'm really good at, things that I'm not so great at. And, I started to really, really, really dissect Isis, who she is. How much have I lived through? How many events in my life occurred that impacted my life? I'm a kind of a badass. There's been so much going on in my life and I survived. And not only did I survive, but I managed to really claw my way out and up. And I surprised not just myself, but I surprised other people. And that is something that I can carry with me. So all I now see in the mirror, when I look in the mirror, all I see is this incredible, strong woman that has been through a lot. And I know that if you really dug deep, into where, who you are and where you came from and all of the things that you've been through and the reasons why you chose a lot of the decisions that you chose, and you are compassionate about it, you look at it with compassion, you'll learn to love yourself too. You'll realize that you're worth a lot more than you're doing to yourself. So don't stay stuck at the mirror. Start to do a little research. Again, the journaling. Journal, timeline your life, go back and see, figure out who you are. I have other exercises for that if you want to start trying. Self-awareness is where I'd start for sure. Looks have nothing to do with self-love. Once you start to love yourself in all other aspects, your looks are going to matter less and less until it's non-existent. And if it's something that you can change, you're going to be motivated to do it. That's even better. If what you need is to gain weight or lose weight or whatever it is, you'll find ways. If it's important to you, you will do it because you love yourself. I hope that makes sense. The next one. How can I practice self-love when my exes all think I'm crazy? So all your exes think you're crazy. And you want to know how self-love can save you from this too. Okay. Here's how this works. When you have a pattern in your life, when you have been looking back and choosing people that are potentially toxic, or your relationships are all ending the same way, right? Maybe that you end up, unable to control your emotions. You're unable to control your anger or unable to control your sadness, and your significant other can't handle it either, and they decide to break it off. And you see that this is a pattern. This is happening with numerous partners. You're going to need to admit and accept the fact that maybe you're playing a part in all of this. This does not mean that you should hate yourself or blame yourself. What it means is that if you come at it from an emotionally intelligent standpoint, you can start to realize that this is an opportunity for growth. There is something in your history, there's something that you need to visit. It needs your attention badly. It's been calling for help for a while. If you are flying off the handle with anger, flying off the handle with sadness, where you cannot process your emotions effectively, you need to work on that. And so the number one advice that I'd give is don't get into another relationship too soon. Give yourself a minute to discover what's going on. If all of them feel the same way, and they don't know each other. They have nothing to benefit from doing this to you, from telling you these sorts of things. And you kind of feel like that's something that's true about yourself. And you're like, I do find myself in this situation where my relationships kind of go in that direction every time. I feel like I'm doing this over and over and over again. Definitely explore it. It doesn't mean that you are crazy. It just means that your emotions are knocking you on your head to tell you that something needs attention. There is potentially something in your history that has never been resolved that you need to revisit. Or it is an emotion that is sort of your emotional kryptonite, that when you have this emotion, this is the one that you can't handle really well, and you need to learn to manage it. And there are tools that can help you to do that. And while I do have an episode for that, if you find that this is something that you don't know if you can handle this on your own, I would strongly encourage you to get professional help. Therapists can help you with this. A psychologist or, even a life coach can kind of walk you through the steps on perhaps even revisiting some of that potentially traumatic experiences that you've had in the past, or just events that may have triggered this chain of events that lead you to being unable to manage those particular emotions. And that's why your partners keep kind of going, hey, there's something going on. Do not take the word crazy as the truth of it, okay? Because the word crazy is very rude and it's rudimentary, and you shouldn't be listening to people who are being that grotesque with you. But take away the lesson from it. If you're hearing the same messages over and over again and they're saying, hey man, you are too much, you've got a lot going on, I don't know if I can do this, listen for, oh, wait, but was it something that I did? And if you acknowledge, because I have a feeling that this person realizes that something's going on and they're having a hard time accepting themselves for that particular issue, my advice is to start with processing emotions, potentially revisiting your past experiences to understand where that all rooted from. When did it start? It could have started in childhood. It could have started with one bad relationship that kind of taught you bad habits. Or it's that you really just haven't taken the time to try to manage it with the right tools. So I urge you to do some research. If you don't want to do this on your own, absolutely engage somebody to help you, walk you through it so that you can start to manage and process those emotions more effectively. And wow, that it's big, and my heart goes out to anybody who really feels like, God, I find myself in the same cycle. Don't see it as something's wrong with me, I'm broken. Don't. This is something you can address. The beauty of it is that you now know that there's something that you can address. So don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. You've got this. You just have to go through the motions. You have to invest a little bit of time in loving and nurturing yourself. There's something that you're missing. There's something you're neglecting in your mental health, in your emotional health that is causing this knee-jerk reaction. So just pay attention. You can do this. This is the next question. How do you practice self-love when you're broke? Okay, so let me just eliminate the myth or dismiss the myth that in order to love yourself, you need to spend a lot of money, because you don't, which is awesome, because God knows, I don't know that I would have been able to start years ago if it had been anything about money. Okay, so there are a lot of things that you can do to begin cultivating self-love and to continually cultivate self-love that cost absolutely nothing. Practice meditation. Become self-aware. Practice mindfulness. You're learning to be, present in the moment without judgment so that you can observe yourself and your environment. We also have, praying is an act of self-care and self-love. Surrounding yourself with really good people. Ending toxic relationships. So on the flip side of surrounding yourself with really good people, don't surround yourself with the people that are bad for you if they are not helping you grow, and if they are contributing negatively to your mental and emotional well-being, cut them out. Setting boundaries, that's totally free. Being able to teach other people how to treat you by making clear that this is what's okay, this is what is not okay. If you continue to do that, there are consequences. I won't tolerate it anymore. If you do that and follow through with your conversation, you can set boundaries successfully. That's a big deal. Taking care of your body, move your body. Dancing is free. Put on some music and dance to your favorites, your favorite song. That's an act of self-love. That's actually exercise, and it actually will promote good emotions. It gives you joy. It makes you happy. What else can you do? Anyway, the list goes on and on and on. There are so many things that you can do at home. And I have released several of these under the self-care and some other self-love in my self-love series. But you have a lot of things you can do for free. You do not need money to love yourself at all. Now, where does that concept come from, where people feel like they need to spend an exorbitant amount of money? Some people like going to the spa. Some people like to get their nails and hair done. That can get very expensive. People like to take, vacations. They like to travel. They want to start a hobby that costs money, including like shooting pool. It costs money to, use someone else's billiard table. It costs money to go bowling. Those sorts of things where you kind of get some sort of release by going other places and paying a premium for it. You don't need to do those during this time. If you are broke, focus inward, go for a walk just to practice that mindfulness. Walking is good for your body and it's good for your mind. You can actually meditate as you walk. That's actually a thing called walking meditation. So there are a lot of things that you can do to promote self-love that don't cost a dime. So I hope that helps. That is the last of the questions. I have, and I know that I have a ton of others that I'd collected over this past several months and just kind of exploring. I've answered a lot of them online, but I really wanted to kind of come online and address the fact that these types of questions where people are trying to solve a specific issue with self-love, it isn't that self-love can't do it. People are just looking during that time. It's hard to look past the issue. It's hard to look past my current pain to do something to help me when I'm stuck in this cycle of emotions and feelings. So the biggest thing for all of these, don't form stories in your head. Don't dwell on how the world doesn't love you because of what you look like, that people are never going to want to date you because, you're not worth it, that, that people are not going to ever going to want to live with you. You're going to be living alone forever. Get out of that mindset of creating stories that you don't know. You don't know any of that stuff. What you do know is that you kind of have a lot of work to do on finding, discovering new things about yourself. Find out what makes you tick. If you can't think of what brings you joy, you have not been cultivating self-love at all. If the only answers that you have to what brings you joy is, I just love being around people and having relationships. I love to be loved. You definitely need self-love. You don't actually need to be in a romantic relationship with another person in order to love yourself. That is not validation that you love yourself, that you're love worthy. So start today. Practice self-love. It actually can answer a lot of these questions in its own way. You just do have to put the effort into it. And you have to understand that self-love is not the key to one specific situation. Once you start practicing self-love, it spreads everywhere. You're going to be a better employee, a better friend, a better parent, a better partner. You are going to realize that when you put the oxygen mask on yourself, it's a lot easier to help others. So it isn't a selfish thing to do. It's the responsible thing to do. And just like I mentioned the example in one of my other episodes, the one about the nurse. What kind of a nurse do you want taking care of your loved one in the hospital? The one that didn't get a good amount of sleep, that finds very little joy in her life, is a little bit miserable about her life and her existence, doesn't really know herself, isn't eating well, is just rolling out of bed and going into work, be feeling moody because there's just nothing wonderful going on, and they're taking care of your family? Or do you want the nurse that cares deeply about herself and she takes the time to understand, her positives and negatives, and she's working on improvement on a day-to-day basis, and she's making sure that she's nurturing her body and nurturing her mind and nurturing her emotions, and she's making sure that she's aware of the things that are going on around her. She is getting a good night's sleep. When she gets out of bed, she's ready for the day. Which nurse do you want? So don't ever let anybody tell you that self-love is selfish. It's not. What's selfish is living your life in a little cave, thinking that your sadness and your inability to crawl out of your cave is impacting no one. It impacts other people. The people around you know when you're not okay. I bet your employees know. I bet your boss notices. I bet your coworkers notice. I bet your family notices. I bet your partner notices. I bet your children notice that you're yelling all the time. Trust me, it will manifest itself. It is not benign. Not loving yourself manifests itself in a million ways in your life. So do the work. It's worth it. What do you stand to gain? Your happiness, your peace of mind, your ability to cope with life. Good luck. You're worth it. I'll see you next time.